Okay. Hello, everyone, and welcome to Binkhorsts and Blockbusters. This is a brother-sister podcast about movies. And in this episode of Dunuary, we're talking about Tremors. I'm
Yeah,
Garrett,
and I'm Kate.
uh, and you had us watch Tremors this week.
Yes, I did. Tremors is a cult classic in my world and has some very serious and obvious connections to Dune that we're going to talk about. And I thought it would be a fun romp for our Dunuary spectacular.
Yeah, I think it will be. So I was curious about the Tremors movie poster because the worm isn't the worm in the
The worm
Tremors.
is not the worm. Um, yeah, I don't know. Choices.
Yeah, it's kind of weird. It seems like it might be part of it, but then we can look at the close-ups later, and I don't think it is. But um, it conveys the smallness of the people and the bigness of the worm, and also reminds you that this movie is just Jaws on land.
That's true. It is a clear allusion to Jaws. And in fact, that's probably what they said. They said to the people, like some artists, they were like, "Hey, we have these three guys in a movie and we need you to make a Jaws poster, but it's a worm."
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. I'm sure that's exactly how that poster occurred.
Yeah, I mean, this was, the 90s, the very early 90s, late 80s, early 90s. Creativity was drying up, quite honestly.
Yeah, I mean, there might not have been room in the budget for a good poster, you know.
Yeah, I mean, we'll talk a little bit about that. But first, what's on TV?
Yeah, so this week I didn't watch a lot of TV, but I did go and see Madonna, and I got to see her celebration tour. And so during the tour, there is it's so during because she's a pop star, a lot of the like show is changing costumes and like a lot of dancing. So there's these in between songs. Sometimes they did this music video, and then there'd be dancers on the stage doing this dance. And so they did The Beast Within. And that is a song from the early 90s. She did like or not 90s, early 2000s. She did a little music video, but it's all like spoken word.
Yeah,
And it is solid. Like I was watching it and I was like, is this about current events or is it about Dune? Because it really feels like it's about Dune. And you listen to the lyrics and you're like, I think the Madonna is a Benny Gesserit. Just saying. Just saying.
yeah, you sent me the video and I watched it, and I was like, the imagery for being a Benny Gesserit is here, and yeah, I think the case is to be made.
Yeah, yeah. I think that's it. You know, she comes from a long line of practicing rich future ladies, and it actually, explains why she looks so young and beautiful and
She's
can
on
still
that
dance.
spice. Yeah.
Yeah, she has found the spice.
I mean, in a
And
very similar way to Weapon of Choice being a song about Dune, I think Madonna's probably in on it too.
yeah, yeah,
Well, I'm
so
glad you enjoyed it, and
yeah,
and you got to experience Madonna in concert.
yeah. It was very cool. Yeah, definitely a cool show. It did start very late, and me and the entire audience was made up of olds who, were should have been in bed. So,
Mm,
it was one of those things, and it was on a Thursday. Like, who needs to be up past midnight on a Thursday?
that's
Like,
uh, that's a hard sell.
yeah, and I didn't have any spice. Like, she didn't share the spice. Like, it was a rough time.
I'm sure you could have tapped the shoulder of somebody 3 seats down and gotten your hands on some.
Hi, not in this crowd, Garrett. It was
Not in
not
this
that kind of
crowd. Okay.
crowd. It was
Okay.
not that kind of crowd. Yeah,
All
not
right.
that kind of crowd. Yeah. It's too bad. Too bad. But yeah, so speaking of gods on the television, what have you been watching?
So, so you told me to watch this documentary on a cult that like worships Robin Williams, and I was like, okay. And little did I know that was only like a sliver, a little slice of what these people do.
Little slice, little slice.
Yeah, a little slice. So on HBO, there's this documentary called Love Has Won, and it's about the cult of Mother God, who is like this woman that believes she's God, um, or a part of God, because there's also Father God, but there's like four or five different fathers gods, and there's a multiverse Father God. It's all very weird. These people are all high as shit the whole time. It's it's such a strange and like disturbing descent into the madness of these like weird health cults. Because like they sell like all these like essential oils and bullshit. Like all this nonsense.
Yeah, it's interesting because they are definitely not they're yeah, it's really interesting because they're not a Christian cult. They're
No.
definitely a more new wave left-wing cult. And but they don't seem to have any real like respect for nature or a higher power
Or
or
or an
like
aversion to violence.
aversion to violence and bad language and drinking and partying. And so it's almost the kind of cult like that. And honestly, like this is what it was. It was a group of people who were using the internet platform and cult related tactics in order to sell some products and live off of this kind of like weird internet fame and a little like therapy. Like they did like online one-on-one therapy sessions,
Yeah,
which
yeah.
I mean, these people had no background in anything,
Well,
useful that would, give them that.
a couple of them that got brought on were like spiritual healers and like had like a background doing that sort of thing. I realize that isn't like a therapist or anything, but like people look for that sort of guidance. Like people have always looked for that sort of guidance.
Yeah, yeah,
But
yeah.
but
But
it
I mean,
comes with the you should buy our silver water and turn yourself blue.
yeah, yeah. You should buy our medicinal supplements, our cool looking stones, our, you know,
T-shirts, hoodies.
t-shirts, that very commercialism. And that's not something that I'm used to in, like cult documentaries and stuff like that. So that was weird. I mean, it was just really it's an out there one. And then the other idea was like, and I mean, we're not spoiling the whole thing here. This
No.
is very deep. There is a lot going on. But there is this idea that there are like spiritual like guidance from dead celebrities, but it was all filtered through
Yeah.
this lady. So, I mean, honestly, it sounds like the kind of thing you make up to get views, like because there was a lot of that. And then there's
The
the Dr. Phil thing. Like it's a documentary that if you have any interest in this weird shit, you need to watch. You need to just be prepared. You
the
need to be
doc
prepared.
the Dr. Phil thing made me lose my mind. That was the part where like it completely lost me and I felt like we were in a different reality. Because like I don't respect Dr. Phil at all. He's a hack fraud.
Total
He's
hack
a
fraud.
charlatan. He's just on TV to be popular. And
Hmm.
like some people were trying to get their family out of this cult and they were like, "Well, who do we reach out to? What do we do? Dr. Phil?" And like I was like, "Is everybody in the world crazy?" Like it was really insane to me because if I ever got mixed up in a cult and you wanted me out of a cult and I would not listen, I think I told you hire a mercenary to extract me like SEAL Team 6. Like just go for it because at a certain point these people don't listen to reason or logic because they've like diluted themselves into thinking something that they've been repeating for a decade at this point. Like it's insane.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, yeah, and I mean that's the way it is with any cult. And like so the good thing I will say about this cult is that, if you're somebody who's maybe on the fence about watching this, is these people they only really harm themselves and a small group of believers. And they do defraud some people, which, but so does, most people who sell shit on Instagram. Like that's the level of
Yeah,
defrauding we're
yeah,
getting to here.
yeah.
Like there's no real child abuse, or like there's definitely drug use. There's definitely like manipulation of, people in this weird polygamy kind of like situation that's real strange. But I mean, it's also the kind of thing that these people are totally on board with.
Like
Like,
I definitely understand parts of it, and like wanting to have a nice community to just get high with and like not have to deal with the world's problems. And in a lot of ways they had some like good vibes and like positive ideas, but it was all just like outweighed by this weird money making scheme and like this belief that you're so much bigger than you are, and like self-doubt and alcoholism. Like it was really just people breaking themselves and breaking each other, which was kind of hard to watch.
yeah, I mean, I guess I didn't get the vibe that that was as bad. But I mean, on the other hand, on the positive side, you have a group of people who, want to just hang out and get high together. So they come up with a scheme to make money through YouTube and the internet and selling shit. Like,
Well, yeah, they had like us a podcast, and they did live
yeah,
streams, and we're just trying to have good vibes, and like it's
yeah.
it's it's weird. It's something that like couldn't have existed back like when you think a bunch of cults did. So it's interesting to see like a modern day cult that is so heavily documented. Like they use so many of the old like live streams and videos and like forum posts that they did. Like all this shit is cataloged.
Right.
It's
Yeah.
really crazy in that regard.
Yeah. And it's similar to like the Nexium documentaries where, they use so much of their own material against them.
Hmm.
And I mean, Nexium was way creepier. Like this is not as creepy as Nexium because and that's the thing. I think if you're the kind of person who can see through a facade at all, you're gonna see through this facade. You're
Yeah.
gonna be like, yeah. Ugh. So, I mean, it's not, they were only going after a certain type of people. And, in a way, those certain type of people, I think, wanted to be a part of this kind of a thing. Like they
Because
were,
yeah, because they did a lot of conspiracy theorist stuff. And that's one of
yeah.
those groups that like you want to be a part of because you think you're a part of something bigger. That like
Hmm.
you're in the club. You know what's
Hmm.
really going on.
Hmm. Yeah, there was definitely that kind of like ascension and aliens. And yeah, they were always looking at clouds in Colorado and seeing spaceships. And like, I mean, if you've seen clouds out west, they don't look like clouds on the East Coast.
Yeah. I mean, cloud gazing has always been a thing people do, especially on drugs. But
Yeah.
but
Oh,
also
that's true.
clouds are cool.
Yeah.
Aliens also cool, also out there.
Yeah, I mean, I hope so. I hope they aren't living underground.
Oh no.
Hmm.
But see, that would be a good transition if we were talking about the worms that live underground, but instead we're talking about True Detective season 4.
I mean, there still could be aliens living underground in True
So
Detective season 4.
so that is true because True Detective season 4 is about these people in Alaska that are doing like science stuff, like they're studying microbes. And I read a Dan Brown book about aliens that lived in the ice that were like microbe aliens or something. I don't remember much about it. I had to read it for a book report, so I just spark notes it um after like reading half of it.
I mean,
Uh
I read that book and I mean, it's really good. So like
oh,
you should go
okay.
back and read the
You,
rest of
you,
it.
see, I think I'd appreciate it more now because like
Probably,
I have
yeah.
a much better relationship with reading because I'm not
Hmm.
being asked to do it. Like
Well, and I actually think his pre-Da Vinci Code books are way more researched. And because the other one that he did, because that's like called like Sub-Zero or something.
yeah, something like that.
And but his other book, Digital Fortress, I think you would find even better because it's about computers and binary and stuff like that.
Oh yeah, and I'm a computer boy. I'm a computer scientist.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. So we sing the praises of True Detective season one.
Every
Um,
time we can. And
yes,
we watch it regularly.
yes,
Like,
I think I've watched it every year since
yeah,
it
I
came
definitely
out.
watched it last year. So, yeah.
I can think of so few series that I would say are perfect. And True Detective season one, I think, is as close to perfect as you can get. It
Yeah, it's really
has
good.
amazing performances and incredible plot. This dive into a complex web of conspiracy that is actually digestible and
Mm-hmm.
understandable.
And believable too. Like
Yes,
it's not
it's
out of the realm of possibility.
it is based on a true-ish story. There are true elements
I
to it,
didn't
which
need to know that,
yeah,
but that's fine.
it's horrifying. Not the whole thing, but like parts of it.
Yeah.
Um,
Ooh,
I'll send you a video on it.
cool.
And uh True Detective season two kind of lost me because it wasn't the same. These are all written by the same person, Nick Blasio, I think is how you say it.
Huh.
Season three was good. I enjoyed it because it was I think it had a very interesting like narrative arc because it was about somebody who was dealing with like mental degradation and seeing like their past through a different lens and like their cases like blurring together. And season four is an incredible return to form of a pretty standard like police procedural with a mystery. Um, it's doing a little bit of cutting back to season one stuff, which we'll have to see if that turns out to be well done or not, and not just a like, hey, you remember when this was the height of television?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and the thing that I really appreciate is we are, and in addition to be back to like kind of like a spooky, but more like in the way that Silence of the Lambs is spooky police procedural.
Right, right.
And speaking of Silence of the Lambs, it's starring Jodie Foster, who is this kind of
Yes.
grizzled detective who I love the way they've styled and portrayed her character. Like she is so layered and
Yes.
deep and like I mean it's been a while since I've been able to say that about a character on a TV show and share her like
Especially a woman character, because
yes.
we have to remember in this like golden age of television, every one of the protagonists is a man, like Walter
Hmm.
White, Tony Soprano, Don Draper, like it's all these men. And we have back again the like titular hero woman like Clarice. She's kind of back. It's a very different character though.
Oh yeah, very different character, but very nuanced. Interesting motivations, interesting, theories, and like I also love the way that she's styled. Like she's not, a babe. And even in Silence of the Lambs, they made effort to make her attractive and feminine while in this masculine world, and part as a contrast. But in the way that they're styling her in this one, I really appreciate it. The other character that well we love to see is Saul Starr from Deadwood, is our other police guy.
That's him.
Yes! You didn't know that? Oh my God.
I see it now. I see it now. Oh my
Yes.
God.
Yeah, I like jumped up and down. I was like, "Oh my God, it's Saul Star.
Oh my
Yay!"
God.
'Cause like he was one of my favorite characters on Deadwood. Like I
Yes.
loved his
Yes.
character. And he's been in a few other things, but generally as a support role character. And I think that he plays a great, like second guy in the police, guy, and
Yeah.
that he was the
Yeah.
deputy in Deadwood. So, you know,
Yeah,
and then he ran the bank.
I didn't realize until after I was like I finished watching Deadwood and I was like, what else has Timothy Oliphant did? And like in four other shows, he's the sheriff of things, and I'm just like, okay,
Yeah,
okay.
yeah, 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 yeah.
But wow, I didn't recognize him as that. But it has been like 20 years since Deadwood. Like
It
we can
has, and he has aged, and but
Yeah, yeah, because he's got this like weird like he has like a mail order bride on the way kind of thing. Like,
Yeah. And I
see,
can't help but think that's not going to go well.
oh no, no, because he's sending her all of his money, and that's obviously not going to work out well. Um, See, that's the thing about True Detective is I think like it does an amazing job making characters that are not only like believable in their in a realistic way, but in just like these are people that you know that like really exist. And it
Hmm.
doesn't really shy away from that. I think that's what was so great about the first season, especially with Woody Harrelson's character of like this guy whose life and relationship with his wife and kids falls apart as on his own hands of like his own
Hmm.
actions, and it's like it was believable, all the emotions and the feelings and like the reconciliation, and then like seeing them over the time skip. It's just it was truthful, it was honest.
Hmm. Yeah, I really enjoyed that too. And yeah, it's going to be interesting to see how this story progresses. As I don't know if we mentioned, it's set in Alaska during the winter, so during the time when it's dark all day. It has some vibes like that. I mean, I don't want to spoil stuff, but there's some vibes. So go watch the show, and we're gonna keep you updated on our feelings on it and as things progress. We might talk about how it compares to Tremors. So we'll see.
Yeah, maybe there's something lurking under the ice or something.
Is True Detective about Dune?
Um, I don't think so. I don't think so.
I love how long you had to think about it. Like
Well,
that, truly amazing.
I mean, we've been talking so much about like how Dune and its ideas bleed into other works of media, and I think we'll definitely talk about that same like idea a lot when we talk about Star Wars of these sort of like big spectacles like bleeding into other things. If I watched more like procedural television, I think you would see True Detective bleeding into some of that. But I don't watch like the Law and Orders and the CSIs and stuff. I think like those definitely have an effect on what True Detective is, and probably the inverse now that it's very successful, you know?
Mm-hmm. Mm.
Because you don't in a similar way that you don't have Twin Peaks unless you have daytime soap operas, you don't have something like True Detective unless you've had the decades of police dramas and like crime scene investigation, and you know.
Oh, that's true. That's for
Yeah,
sure. But I mean, I do think that True Detective in general is a return to the Silence of the Lambs, to the Alex Cross movies, to, police procedurals that are more than just true crime,
right.
that have other elements, that have, like real intrigue and some fanciful, stuff. And I think that's one of the reasons why it is so much better than, say, your average Law and Order or
Right, right.
whatnot. And I also think that, having the season long mystery arc that we saw, like in Mare of Easttown,
Yeah.
um,
Oh, that was an
you
amazing
know,
show.
yeah, yeah. So, I mean, there are, yeah, good things. I really enjoy the season long, like single season long police procedural. I think that that is the direction that these things should go because all of these things are so nuanced. And I also, the other thing that I really love about these shows and what they give us is, because you're unraveling a mystery and you're trying to solve the crime with them week to week, it's one of those shows that allows you to watch and then talk to your friends about,
Yeah,
you
yeah.
know. So once you have that like critical mass of people who are all watching it week to week, you get to have that kind of Game of Thrones experience of, talking about the show, and but you have that added level of, trying to solve the crime too.
Yeah, and it's definitely not like I don't think I have enough pieces to tell you what's going on. I think
No.
it'll take rewatches and all sorts of things like how I love discovering True Detective. Also, It's really funny. I'll tell this now because I don't think we'll talk about this for a while. But the first time I watched True Detective, my dad was like, "Hey, you have to, watch the show." And we watched like the first 3 or 4 episodes one night while we had pizza, and we ended when the character Reginald Ledoux is revealed, which is one of the best like reveals of a character in recent
Hmm.
memory. And I was just like, we cannot stop here. And I think I was on like summer break or something, so my sleep schedule was atrocious. And I was just like, I have to keep going. So I think that night I like went and just like watched the rest of the season. And then the next day, my dad was like, okay, let's like keep watching it. And I was like, okay, I'll watch it again. I don't care.
My favorite memory from watching it, because so I watched it live with mom and dad, and like not in the same place because I think I was living somewhere else at the time. I
Yeah, I
don't
think
remember
so.
what year it was, but I remember talking to mom on the phone. There were 2 episodes left, and I'd say to mom like, "What do you think's gonna happen in the next episode? There's 2 episodes left. Whatever." And she's like, "I think we'll find out what's going on," which is the best mom answer to anything. But the funny part was that we didn't.
Yeah, no, no.
No, no, we didn't. No, we didn't. Yeah, yeah, that was great. That was great.
Yeah, True Detective, go check it out.
Yeah. Okay, what's on else is on TV
So,
upcoming?
not yet on TV, but will be on TV soon are the Oscars. Last week we talked about the Emmys. Now we talk about the Oscars. There's some controversy. It's so I'll start by saying, despite the fact that we talk a lot about like, movies winning these awards, winning awards is not a metric of like how successful or great a movie was. Um,
Hmm.
it is simply a metric of like, here's what was popular, here's what people noticed was like a really good script or something like that. The mere fact that you're nominated for any of these categories means you have a chance. Like everything that's nominated for a best picture is probably almost without question a great movie, you know. So
I
when
mean,
we
I would say, Garrett, I would argue the case that that was true when there was only 5 nominees.
right,
But
okay.
now that there's 10, I think there's a lot of crap that gets in the list,
So
personally.
so let me rephrase
But a
that
lot of crap wins
as
too.
yes.
Yeah. I mean, I am not a fan of Oscar-winning movies in general.
We do have an Oscar winners thing on the tier list, and it is not great.
Yeah. Well, and we have one that's up there too. So like,
Yeah.
yeah,
We do have a number of Best Picture winners like on the list, in different places.
yeah, yeah.
Um, so I wanted to talk about a few things that I think got really overlooked. Um, for starters, I'm a big Wes Anderson fan. I know, Kate, you're not too familiar with his work. Um, but they made a film this year, Asteroid City, that is really fantastic to look at. It's a really good movie. I don't think it's his best work, but it is very much full of the style. No nominations, no nothing. It had a good music. It had amazing production design and hairstyling and all that kind of look because it's like set in the 50s and it has like his signature like look to it. Really should have been on the list for that. Um, Across the Spider-Verse, while not a complete movie because it's a part of the trilogy, is a really fantastically well done animated movie that's in the running for best animation, but it had such a phenomenal score to accompany it, and it's not in the score category. Indiana Jones 12 or whatever number we're on is, which I know it's John Williams, so it is good, but come on, it wasn't new, it wasn't groundbreaking. And I want to give a shout out to the film The Holdovers, which I watched over the Christmas season with Paul Giamatti. it just fantastic, fantastic movie.
Hello, this is Garrett in post production. I wanted to make a quick addendum to what I just said. It sounds like I watched the movie with Paul Giamatti. I did not have such a luxury, although if you're out there, I would enjoy it. Instead, he is one of the stars of the movie. I just wanted to clear that up.
Yeah.
That was my Oscars spiel.
Yeah, I mean, I'm glad you pointed out some of those. I have not dived deep into this because I saw the general outrage online about the Barbie movie, and you know, I I I just don't understand what they're going with here. Like so Barbie wasn't nominated for Best Actress and Greta Gerwig was not nominated for Best Director. Even though I have not yet watched the Barbie movie, I know that that was a huge oversight and I am upset about it because, so many people have told me about how this movie Barbie changed their perspective on something. And when we sat down and watched Oppenheimer during the Barb and Oppenheimer situation, it was very clear to me that the mood online and even in the theaters and all of that was angling way toward Barbie. And
Yes.
me being a, war nerd, clearly, because I've
Yeah.
spent the last 36 hours of my life listening to Dan Carlin's Supernova of the East podcast, which we didn't even get into my feelings on the Pacific, which I also watched this week on TV. But anyway, so like clearly, if I was going to pay $25 to see one movie that
Right.
last summer, it
Right.
was going to be Oppenheimer. And I
Yes.
was very glad that I did that.
Yes.
But most people didn't make that choice, and most people went the other way, and most people were very happy about it. And in the grand scheme of things, you have a movie with a manic pixie dream girl as the only female character that doesn't pass the whatever the Bechdel test at
Yeah.
all,
Yes.
versus a movie that is about, female empowerment and individuality and like all that shit, and completely snubbed and very upsetting.
Yeah.
Yeah, because
Also,
wasn't Ken nominated, but nobody else was?
he was nominated for, I think, Best Supporting Actor. Garrett in post will figure it out.
Ryan Gosling has been nominated for Best Supporting Actor for Barbie.
Yeah, really, really upsetting there.
And one thing that like got a lot of discourse about it was adapted screenplay, which is typically reserved for like books and things. I didn't know this, but Scorsese's Killers of the Flower Moon is based on a book of the same name. And it's
Hmm.
not in the running for best adapted screenplay, but Barbie, which is, it is an existing property, but as far as I'm aware, this is not a direction that Barbie has ever taken before. Is
Yeah.
not it's adapted screenplay. I'm very confused by that.
Yeah, that's
I
that's
think
so
these
bizarre.
boxes are just weird.
Yeah, and like why is that like a part of the equation? Like because it's not completely original content, I guess, but like is Killers of the Flower Moon in the screenplay category?
No, it's not, despite the fact that it's based off a book, also in running for Best Picture and I think Best Director and things. Like it is,
Yeah, well, and
um,
and you know that, it's probably going to win then too. Like, and that's the thing is like, over the years we've been able to look at the list of movies and know who was going to win. I mean, it's changed a little bit more recently,
right.
but like it's really disappointing.
Yeah, and I think this year, well, I don't think it's the case, but the year that Parasite won, it won Best
Hmm.
Picture. And then after that award was given, Best International Film was given, and it, of course, won that one as well. We're in a similar situation where there is a film in both of those lists. And while I don't think it's going to win Best Picture because it's probably going to go to Barbie or Oppenheimer or Killers of the Flower Moon, one of these like huge movies that people have been waiting for a while. by like, one of these famous directors, I still think it's weird that we're like categorizing things in this way. I don't think it particularly works for how it's going to be presented. But
Hmm.
who knows? The Oscars are always really interesting with how cringy and weird they are.
That's
So
true. Yeah, it's always good for a good cringe moment. Let's hope we can get another Chris Rock moment
I
this year.
I don't want somebody to get assaulted on stage again, but I do want somebody to lose all of their public image and credibility. Um, so let's see how that happens this year. Um, so we've been doing this little series called Dunuary. Um,
Dunuary!
yeah, where we're talking about Dune stuff because the new Dune movie comes out in about a month at this point. You can go ahead and buy tickets. There's the Dune Lego comes out in a couple days. It's the season.
That's a great metric, Garrett. The Dune Lego.
Yeah,
I'm glad that our viewers now know about it.
there is a Dune Lego set. It's very cool. Garrett in post production show it. It's great. I want it.
Well, you know, that's cool. I'm
Uh,
sure it'll be better than all of the 1984 Dune action figures.
it is so much better. There is not a weird cat in a box.
You never know, it could be inside.
Oh, maybe there's a cheeky Easter egg. I don't know.
That
Um,
would be funny.
it would be. So today we're talking about Tremors. We've talked about Lawrence of Arabia, the original Dune. We have to talk about Dune Part One, Beetlejuice, and Star Wars as well.
Yep,
So
they are on the Dunuary list.
yes. So
So,
let's. Oh, sorry.
yeah. Oh, I was just gonna say that this was my suggestion for the Dune lineup. So if you're mad about it, it's my fault. Send all your hate comments to me. But really, Tremors is a great little romp, and you should have had fun. So if you didn't have fun, you're a stick in the mud, and I'm sorry.
Stick in the mud. Stick in the mud. So I this is the first time I've seen Tremors. I
Was
liked
it a
it.
life? It was a life-changing experience, wasn't
It was because things started to click.
it?
So this was released in 1990. So this film is quite a bit older than me and well you. Not a lot, but it's a bit before our time, but it's something that we both enjoy. You've seen most of the Tremors?
Yes, I think I've seen most of them. Definitely not the most recent one. But yeah, there was definitely a year of my life where I consumed all of the Tremors that I could at that time. I don't know when that was. I can't really recall, but they hold a special little place in my heart.
In Germany, the title for this film is "In the Land of the Rocket Worms." I had to consult my friend who speaks German as to the legitimacy of the translation, but that's fantastic.
Yeah, that's really wonderful. And it really, like is the word for in the land of the rocket worms Arrakis?
No, but should it be? Yes. Uh,
Though,
so
I mean, they don't go particularly fast. So, like rocket worms, I'm not sure if that's the right translation,
so
but
so I asked him because I was like, are you sure this isn't like rocket like of the rock or something like that? And he was
oh,
like,
yeah.
no, this is the word for rocket. And I was like, okay, okay.
Mm, mm.
I think it might have to do with like their shape because they are, but
Oh.
like they are just worms. Um, so to do the standard spiel of what this movie is about, this movie takes place in a desert, and it's about a group of isolated people.
Hmm.
Worms arrive and put them under new rule to their disadvantage. So a little tweak on the plot that we've been going with for Dunuary so far.
That's true. The worms do, the worms are really in control here. And I
Yes.
think that, if we harken back to the time before the Harkonnens arrived on Arrakis, maybe before, the Emperor landed on Arrakis and they discovered the spice, and the time of the, Fremen living in freedom on Arrakis, then we can understand more of the real plot of Tremors.
Yeah, yeah, because these are people who are trying to figure out what this creature is, what they do, how they work. It's
Hmm.
very investigative in that regard of trying to figure out the rules of this monster movie. Because first and foremost, that's what it is. It's a monster movie. It's
It is
Jaws,
definitely a
you
monster
know.
movie. Yeah. And it is also in a long line of monster movies. Even before Jaws, of like B monster movies where, you have this hideous weird monster that's coming at you and you got to figure out how to get away from it and how to deal with it, and
Mhm.
like yeah, yeah, it's a classic monster movie.
So Tremors flopped at the box office. One of the writers, Brent Maddox, said it was because the movie trailer was cringeworthy, that it highlighted most of the camp that exists in the movie, but it was also trying to play it straight. I watched the trailer. It's interesting because it has 90s trailer voice, and then also
Mm,
like them like being like, oh, we got him, and like saying some weird lines and stuff. It's very strange. But despite the fact that it flopped, there are like 30 more Tremors. So it has a cult following.
yeah. Well, and also like if you've ever watched I remember watching the trailer for Oh Brother, Where Are Thou? And I was just absolutely flabbergasted at what that trailer presented versus the movie. So like movie trailers in the 90s, they went to a weird place. It was very strange. And I understand.
Yeah. Well, so much of it, I think, comes from, and we talked about this a bit about the poster, is these trailers and promotional material is made while the movie's still in production. So like things change, scenes get cut. Um, like a really good example of this is the first Suicide Squad movie, where the trailer came out and it was cut by a trailer house, like people who make trailers, and everybody was like, "Oh yeah, this looks so cool." And they had like a rough cut of the movie, and they were just like, "People really like how we did the trailer, so let's just make the movie like the trailer," and sent it over to them to be edited. And it's like, that's not that's not good. That's not how art should be made.
No, and yeah, the difference between a trailer and a movie, I mean, there's a reason why you have specific people who make trailers because you need a certain thing, like you don't and it's like we talked about the Dune trailer a couple times for the new Dune movie and how like, there's a little bit of concern that they've given away too much in the trailer.
Yes.
And, you
Especially
know,
with like the scenes, because now you also just put like a 2 or 3 minute scene out, like Napoleon did, um, Dune did. Like it's just, here's part of
yeah.
the movie you're going to go see.
Well, and this is interesting too because like especially like right after Napoleon came out, when all my friends saw it and told me it was god awful and not to see it, I still kept seeing the trailer and I was like, God, this is a good trailer. Man,
Yeah,
like I really want to see this movie because this trailer is so good.
it gave you
Despite like
chills.
everyone in my life telling me that it was the biggest piece of shit they'd ever seen. So, except it had hats. So, I do want to
Yes,
see it. I'm just not going to pay money.
yes, very reasonable. Um, So the film stars are two partners, Val and Earl, who work together in the middle of nowhere. Um, when this first started, I really thought they were a couple. They had some good chemistry there, hanging out in the woods or hanging out in the middle of nowhere, not the woods.
Yeah, it's a desert.
Yeah, it's a desert. Just hanging out, sleeping in the back of the pickup truck, like.
Making breakfast for each other.
Yeah, like they seem like a couple happy campers. And then Kevin Bacon as Val has to come out and just be like put the most heterosexual foot forward and be like, I hope this random woman that we run into in the desert is the most beautiful person in the world. Like it's so
Yeah.
weird. Um, so you asked me, what was Kevin Bacon in? Was he popular before this? And despite the fact that we both hate musicals, I knew he was in Footloose. Like that was years before this. But
Well, I didn't know. In my mind, I had no idea when Tremors was released because you
okay.
do all the research. I
Yes.
just watch the movies and provide the color here.
Yes.
And then too, like I have never seen Footloose and refuse to acknowledge its existence, so I have no concept of that movie.
So strangely, he got his start in acting in National Lampoon's Animal House,
Yeah,
which
I don't remember him at all in there. But here's the problem. If you
I had to
showed
look it
me,
up. He was like a tertiary character.
but that's the thing. Kevin Bacon to me is so bland and just like another white guy that like if you showed me a lineup of guys from movies in the 90s, I would not guess this was Kevin Bacon.
Okay, that's reasonable. I mean, yeah, so there is a game that you can play about movies, Five Degrees of Kevin Bacon, where you connect him to like other actors via movies.
Yeah.
And part of that is because he's been in a lot of different kinds of movies. Already we've
Oh.
mentioned a comedy, a musical, and a like schlocky monster movie. Um,
Yeah. Well, because so the thing is that Kevin Bacon being like a household name doesn't make sense for this movie.
right,
Like,
right.
and his acting is not, like anything I would write home about. And so, like, I was confused as to, like why he was in it and all that. And then also, slight spoiler alert for Tremors 2, he's not in Tremors 2. So, like, oh, was he too famous to be in Tremors 2? Like, that was the question I was getting to, but I didn't.
Yeah, I don't know.
Yeah.
Um,
I don't think it's important either.
he stars opposite Fred Ward, who has a number of acting credits. He was in like a lot of television and stuff. He was also a clown, a
Oh.
boxer, and a lumberjack. So a real man's man.
Well, at least one of those makes sense.
Huh. Um, so those are like our main characters. They have a really good on-screen chemistry and do well to try to one up each other in like doing the cool manly stuff that will save the town of giant worms.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah, and this is another movie like from the 90s where, I don't want to call it a bromance, but I mean, I guess we could go there, but
yeah, I'd
like
say it is.
yeah, and these are two dudes who have a really good relationship and who are friends and get along and like they want to go start a business together and like they already have a business together of pretty much doing all of the handyman bullshit in this town, which is not very big and there's not a lot of stuff to do. Um, yeah, yeah, it's an interesting dynamic that I wish we had more of.
Yeah, we don't because like this is a very positive male relationship. Like
Yeah.
like this is a very positive friendship that like doesn't get destroyed or have a lot of drama in it.
Hmm.
Yeah, I don't, it's it feels weird because so much like masculine media is like about beat 'em ups and like love triangles and bullshit. But here we don't really have that.
Yeah.
Maybe a little bit of that with our scientist lady.
Yeah. And the scientist lady is such an interesting character.
Yeah, so we talked about this a bit with like Independence Day, but in a lot of these like kind of like sci-fi concepts or like monster movies or things, there is scientist man who is there to explain to us like the plot and like a reason for why these things are going on. Like, you know, what all these like Godzilla creatures are, or about like ghosts or aliens or how science works or whatever. But here we have a scientist lady.
Yeah, and the 90s was full of scientist ladies. There's a James Bond where there's a scientist lady that you're like, what the hell? I think it's Demi Moore. Then, the biggest scientist lady that I can think of in recent memory was, of course, Natalie Portman in Thor.
Yes, that is true.
Yeah, the scientist lady really takes off as a genre from this point onward.
Which is great. We need more women in STEM.
Oh, who's another good scientist lady is Jodie Foster in Contact. Hell
That's
of a
that
scientist lady.
that's true. That's a
She might
very
be
good one.
pinnacle of
Yes,
scientist lady right there.
yes. Um, so this character is played by Finn Carter, who did a lot of work in soap operas and was a theater actress. And they're out in the desert studying seismic activity in the valley, and they're detecting strange signatures of the worms.
Yeah, yeah, the worms, but she doesn't know that. She thinks there's some kind of mining or construction going on, and so these are really unknown. There's some weird seismic shit happening.
And
We don't really know what state they're in either, do we?
they're in Nevada.
Okay. So far enough away from the California earthquake
Yeah.
situation.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
and not like in Colorado or Wyoming where there are like hot springs and geothermal activity.
Yeah. Well, we know that because she mentions how there's a lot of dirt around.
Yeah, yeah.
Well, because the worms can only go through the dirt. They don't go
Right, right.
through
She uses the
rock.
scientific name for dirt, and that confuses all of these rednecks.
Yeah, which is very funny.
Um, so I wanted to bring up in a lot of these sort of movies, particularly horror movies, monster movies, there's a lot of objectification of women, and
Hmm.
she does not get objectified nearly as much as many of these others. She does lose her pants at a
She
certain time,
does. Yeah.
which is very cringy. Because like she got like tangled in some barbed wire, and I think Kevin Bacon is trying to help her, and these guys have like pocket knives and like like that kind of thing. Like he should have just been able to cut it off, but no, we had to have this woman showing her legs in the movie, which very weird. Not but like not as bad as it could have been, I guess.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, like, yeah. I will hold on my thoughts on this for the what did we learn slide.
Okay, okay, that's fair because I thought it was notable in that this woman was not objectified more than she probably would have been in the 90s. Um,
Yep.
sorry, this is the male gaze.
Yes, yes, yes. The male gaze. Yeah, yeah. There was
So,
not a lot of objectification. I mean, clearly she's not, like the babe that, Kevin Bacon's character wants her to be. Um, and that's kind of like a point in the movie that she's
right.
not a babe.
But like they still get together in the end. Like he
Yeah,
still
because he
gets the
realizes
girl.
that a babe is not necessarily the, thing that you're after.
What you're after is somebody who can survive the worm apocalypse together.
Yeah, clearly.
Because she's very smart and resourceful in this movie. There's a scene where they're all trapped on a rock and are like, how on earth do we get to the truck so we can get away from this worm? Because the worm will just wait us out. And she comes up with the idea to pole vault across the rocks in a very strange scene because the music in it is just weird. It's very happy-go-lucky, like you're not on the verge of being eaten by a giant worm.
Yeah, yeah. It's the 90s.
Yeah, just a weird tone throughout the movie. Like it doesn't quite know what it wants to be. Um,
I mean, it's camp. That's what it is,
yeah.
and you just have to accept it.
So that scene is actually what inspired the movie. So the two writers were working for the Navy at the time, making like safety videos, and they were out on some rocks, and they were like, what if there was something that like prevented us from, or that was like trapping us on the rock? And they thought about like a land shark, and that's kind of what a tremor is. It's kind of a shark. Um, and they worked with this guy Ron Underwood, who is a documentary director at National Geographic, and so like he knew a lot about like animals and the environment and stuff, and they all worked together to create like the tremor, the graboids is what they're really called. That's the name of the monster, into like making it a real presence in the world and to like have it be a lot more animalistic, which I think translates very well because at least in the first movie, how they work is very well established. And I think as a consistent monster, they're there. You always know what the stakes are.
Hmm. Yeah. Yeah, and it's a very, and we'll talk about the worm more
Yes.
in a few slides, but yeah, it's a very understandable monster that's really fun.
Um, and this is a transition to our next topic. Um, there's another woman in this movie. In fact, there are multiple. And another one that is incredibly resourceful is the Doomsday Preppers. Um, so this movie does a good job about having a small environment, a small cast of characters in that like we learn enough about each one of them to be like fearful of their safety and to like want to see them succeed and
Hmm.
win and not get eaten by the monster.
Yeah, and that's kind of abnormal for, horror movies or monster movies in general. That they really do create a compelling cast of, there's no jerks in this, bit except for the teenage boy. And I think that was a good way because, even if you think that the teenage boy is a jerk, you still don't want him to die because he's a kid.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think that they did a really good job in like creating these characters that were interesting. They're all unique, and of course they are. They live in the fucking desert, and they have a reason to live there, and they want to live there. And there's some other god vibes too. Like it's an interesting little town ecosystem that they create.
Yeah, because the mother's like, hey, you guys need to stay in town because I need to fulfill like a pottery order, so you have to build me a kiln and I'll like pay you in beer and like they consider it a triumph to say no to that because that does sound like a pretty good deal.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
Yeah, like a month's worth of work. Like, 'cause that was one of the reasons why they were gonna leave is that they were kind of bored and, work there wasn't very fulfilling.
yeah, it was cleaning up people's trash and poop and stuff. Like it wasn't a good life for them, but there was like this sense of community that they all had. Like everybody who was in the film had interacted with each other for so long that there was like instinctive we got to stick together mentality,
Mm-hmm.
which
Yeah.
isn't something you usually see in a horror movie. There's usually like somebody that thinks, I'm gonna go out into the fog. I don't care. I can go farther without you guys. But here it was very believable in that we need to figure out what's going on so we all stay safe. They all
Yeah.
cared about each other.
Yeah, there was a great sense of community in this little town. And I agree. That was a really fun aspect to it. Especially and there's also like a really diverse community. The
Yeah, we haven't talked about Victor Wong, who plays Walter Chang, the shopkeeper, who was
yeah,
also the sorcerer in Big Trouble in Little China. Um,
yeah, a
I,
movie
I
we love to talk about.
yes, I love that movie so much. Y-
Yeah, yeah. So, I mean, he's an Asian man who owns the corner store, and he actually is the one who names the graboids.
yeah, because he buys one of the tendrils and is like, yeah, like this will be a roadside attraction. Like he's a little bit of a grifter in that way, but Like
Yeah. But I
I,
mean, like, like what are you gonna do out there? And I mean, I guess that does play on like a stereotype of like Asian wanting to make money off,
y- yeah,
stuff.
yeah, a bit. This film
Yeah.
isn't that progressive for being in the 90s. They did women all right, but minorities not
Yeah.
so much.
But I mean, there was a minority, and
Yes.
especially in a place where there are not typically a lot of minorities. The West,
Yeah, this
like,
part of the West. Yes, yes. Um, and we mentioned the doomsday preppers because obviously out in the middle of nowhere, you're going to have these people who are like, I want to be on the edge of society. I don't want to deal with any of this shit. Um, and they have like a whole fucking arsenal downstairs. It is horrifying because these people really exist.
well, and the other thing to remember that this movie came out before the Cold War was over.
This is true. Yeah, a little bit before the Berlin Wall fell. Yeah, a
Yeah,
little bit. Yeah.
this is important for Tremors too. So just yeah.
Wait, well, hold on, hold on. Are the worms in Tremors 2 communists? Is it
No,
is it a Russian plot to get the worms? Are they a Russian invention?
no, no, nothing interesting.
Does does Gorbachev turn into a worm?
No, it's after the war is over, so there's no Soviet involvement.
Okay, hold on, hold on. Does one of the worms go to Russia and turn into Vladimir Putin? Is Putin a worm?
No, that is not part of at least Tremors 2. It might be part of 4.
Okay. See, I'm excited to know where Tremors goes because when I was watching this, I was like, if you set this back in like the Wild West time, it would be the exact same movie.
Yeah, because the
Because
technology, yeah.
yeah, yeah, it would be guys with rifles and revolvers, much like this, with dynamite instead of pipe bombs, and they'd just be like, I guess this is what's out in the Wild West. I brought my family in a caravan. Sure, let's kill these giant worm things.
Yeah, that's true. And I don't remember if there's any that are set in the past, but that is certainly a possibility. I'll have to do a little Googling as we continue on.
Because this movie is timeless in a sense that like there's not a lot to date it. Like it feels as much
Yeah.
90s as it would like a 60s or 70s or even 80s movie. Like even like today I feel like it would be the same except instead of saying the radios don't reach high because we're in a valley, it would be yeah, the cell phone tower's down or something. Like
Yeah, and well, I think that's one of the reasons why I asked you about Kevin Bacon because I had no idea when this movie came out. Like I literally did not know. I didn't look it up. I didn't care. I was just like Tremors.
let's go. Let's
Yeah.
get warmed up.
Yeah.
So speaking of worms, we get to kind of our main event, talking about the worms. Um, so very similar to Steven Spielberg's Jaws, this is the tremor, the graboid is just a very, very big puppet. Um, Being that this was made in 1990, this was before so many of the CGI things. I know we mentioned talking in the first Dune about like the first CGI monsters were snakes. That
Hmm.
that's where you got like Anaconda and like snakes on a plane and like that sort of shit because a snake is really easy to animate and make it look decent because it's just a line with some articulation. Um, so once Jurassic Park comes out and they're like, we can do everything in CGI. We don't need any of these practical effects. We don't need any of the cool latex rubber models or the guys that are doing big puppets. We don't need any of that. I feel like you instantly start to lose the charm of these monsters and making them feel like they exist in the world.
Hmm. Absolutely. Yeah.
So in the scene that's on screen, Kevin Bacon is pulling out part of the worm that has like killed itself crashing into a wall. Now, this big model was buried in the sand, and then they dug it back up to give it like the look, and how he's holding it and moving it around. It feels so real in the scene, whereas now it would all be CGI, including the landscape and the background, and it wouldn't have the same weight and like presence as it does in this movie, which is,
Hmm.
you know, despite the fact that this movie isn't like a pinnacle of cinema, the monster is amazing in a very
Yeah.
similar way to like how the monsters in The Thing and in Jaws like kind of overshadow a lot of other aspects of the movie. This is something that truthfully for me steals the show.
Yeah, and I mean, as bad as some of the acting or writing is sometimes, the graboids are really entertaining and really interesting monsters.
Yeah, they're unique. This isn't just like we made a big leech or Attack of the 50-foot ants or
Oh my
it's a
gosh.
big tarantula, you know.
I
This
have
is this
seen,
is unique.
so I was part of a film club in when I lived in Indiana, and one of the only good things about Indiana. Hi friends, if you're listening. And we one of the first movies we watched was because we watched B movies,
Yeah.
was called The Creature That Challenged the World. And Garrett, I would be exaggerating if I said that this was a snail that challenged a culvert.
Okay.
It was not a large, interesting creature that challenged the world. I mean, they literally filmed snails and just made them very large.
A snail isn't that threatening to me.
No,
And
indeed.
even one that would be like 50 feet tall, like that's
Yeah, I mean, even like if you were to say that this culvert was infested with snails, I would not think that that was going to challenge the world in any way,
yeah.
much less involve naval involvement.
We got to do an airstrike on the 50-foot snail.
Garrett, if you only had watched this movie, you would understand
Okay. Um,
that that was indeed the plan, Garrett. That was the plan.
okay.
Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah.
I,
Yeah. I
I
don't recommend this film, but I mean for 1950s, like, but that's where we're coming from. We're
right, right,
coming
right.
from a land of like really weird monsters that aren't very exciting and don't really challenge anything and,
And, and I will say that that is one of the benefits of CGI is the fact that like you can go, oh, I want this dinosaur or I want this monster or this monstrosity that would be impractical to like make a physical representation of or like hard to make a puppet out of. Like I absolutely get that. Like that is the use
yeah.
for it.
Yeah, and
100%.
And definitely, in the last 5 or 10 years, we have seen such, good monsters come out of CGI land. Just really good production value of CGI and all of those things. And I think in part due to, how good it is in video games now. Because that's
This
something that,
yeah, yeah.
yeah, yeah.
It's comparable.
Hmm. Well, I
Um
mean, I think that it's one of the things that drove it forward because, like if we return to, Star Wars Episode One and we go, ugh, they did some poor CGI in that movie. Part of that is because they just, they hadn't figured it out yet. They hadn't
yeah.
figured out textures and stuff that, by the mid 2010s we have solved the issues. That
Yeah,
doesn't mean
I
I
would agree.
wouldn't. I love puppets. I want more of them. I love practical effects. I want more. I especially wish that they would have stopped doing the CGI of these monsters when it wasn't there yet. Because there's so many movies
Yes.
in the 90s and early 2000s where they just don't have it there yet. And it's
Yes.
really disappointing.
So the graboids were developed by um, Amalgamated Dynamics, who have done a lot of other prop and effects work. They did Alien 3 and 4. Um,
Hmm. Hmm.
So Alien 3 is the one that takes place on like the prison planet and has a lot
Yeah.
more different like xenomorphs and things. So
Yeah.
incredible. Um, they also did Starship Troopers,
Oh.
another great one about bugs, and they did a lot of the effects in the Sam Raimi Spider-Mans. There are a number of movies they did, but those were a few of the notable ones that I saw at a glance at their filmography. Um, I might try cutting in some footage I saw of behind the scenes of how the worms were made as we kind of talk about a few of the effects because that's something that I really like is how the hell these things came to life.
Hmm. Yeah, and these are fascinating.
Yeah, so so there are a number of different puppets and creations and things they made to make the graboids come to life. One of them was they had a puppeteer stand within the head of the worm, and
Ooh.
the worm was like mounted on their back, and they were inside. And each arm that they had would control a different side of like the three-pronged jaws,
Yeah,
and
that's cool.
yeah, they could just move that around. And the middle one was kind of like affected by how the other two moved.
Hmm.
Um, they would then mount that contraption on a seesaw for that scene in the bunker where it like blasts through the wall and like opens up wide and like smashes down in there. Give it a lot of movement and something realistic as like this is a point of articulation here. Um,
Yeah.
we already mentioned the largest worm here being like buried in the sand, and it makes the worm seem huge. There are a few shots that it's not very clear how big the worms are, and that has to do with the smaller versions that they use. Um, they use smaller versions to like just kind of look like humps going through the sand, and with the smaller ones, they built a miniature desert and then had like a painted background and they filmed against that to get like different shots and close-ups and to show a lot of different movement. And
Wow.
back then, this is how you had to do it. This is exactly what Star Wars did 10, 15 years before. It's
Hmm.
That's how you made these movies, and that's what, in my opinion, that's what makes them so like timeless because it's so real.
Yeah, yeah. And it does have such a great effect, and it doesn't feel, you know, fake in any way. I mean, it's not that these aren't real things because you're,
Right.
you're smarter than that, but like they could be real.
Yes, yes, they feel real in a sense that like they have a presence. In a very similar way to like why I really like Jabba the Hutt in Return of the Jedi. That was like a real thing that was huge and like required three different puppeteers and like different cameras to see what they were doing and a lot of work to like make it happen. It when you see the graboid, you see the like work and effort and like love and care put into these monsters that makes you just like go, yeah, this was art. This is a labor of love here. Whereas like so much of CGI, especially with what we know about how horribly digital artists are treated in video games and in film and television, like the love and care and attention is there, but it's just a lot harder to like kind of grasp the effort and like the length that it goes to. Um,
Hmm. Yeah.
and that's partially because I don't come from a digital art background. And it's very hard for me to understand those things sometimes, but like you see the behind the scenes things and you're like, okay, I kind of understand how they did that. Um, the another big part of the monster is it has these interior worms, these like almost like Alien, how it has the double mouth.
Yeah, I was gonna say this is a very alien-esque approach to a monster. It's a mouth inside a mouth. Ah.
Yeah, it's almost like a Hydra.
Oh
Um,
yeah. Hmm.
they do end up cutting off one of the snake parts, and that's like our first indication of what this monster is. And we're like teased it the whole time. Like we don't know what it is until like halfway through the movie we get a full understanding of what this creature is. At first you think it's just like this eel thing, but no, it's so much more than that.
Yeah, well, and did you mention how they do the camera work just like Jaws?
Yeah, so we have a like low to the ground perspective of like the eyes that we see through like crawling through the dunes of like the worm. The first time we see that is our scientist lady is walking back to her truck after like putting down these seismic readers, and it like, narrowly gets her. And because we've seen Jaws, because we've seen things like The Evil Dead that also uses this, we understand immediately there is something following her and is about to get her. And using
Hmm.
that like common language is really effective into getting us to understand what the hell a tremor is.
Yeah, and it has that kind of like serpentine, movement too. It's just really, really artistic and interesting camera work to really give that effect.
Yeah.
And I
Um,
love the ode to Jaws because I mean it
yes.
truly is an ode to Jaws of, following. And the music is interesting in that moment too. It's still weird, but this is the 90s. Things were weird.
Yeah. So the way these like snake things worked is they had like somebody had like a couple pulleys that they had like mounted to a rig, and if you pulled one of them, it would like jerk it this way. If you pulled the other, it would like curl and bend. Like there were two wires running on like the inside and outside, so you could kind of make it like snake around.
Hmm.
And it's just so cool, the sort of like problem solving and whatever that it used to make this. Um, I'm looking at the picture now, and I wonder if it is a friend of the podcast, KY Jelly, on the inside of this greasy, disgusting monster.
I
Um,
am sure it is. I can't imagine they would use anything else.
yeah, I don't know. I didn't see.
Maybe we'll
And
get a sponsor someday from friend of the podcast. Wow, speechless.
this
Speechless.
this is a reminder. This is a brother sister podcast. I don't want that kind of sponsorship, Kate. Um, who's speechless now?
It has other uses, clearly.
Yes, clearly, if we want to make a monster on Halloween or whatever.
Yeah.
One of the final big effects in the movie is they lure the tremor to diving off of a cliff because they're like, this thing is going to chase us. If we chase it to somewhere that like it can't get out of, then we've got it. So they chase him to the edge of the cliff. And for this, the miniature they made was just like a big cliff wall. They cut a hole about like a foot and a half, 2 feet, and just threw the puppet out of, filled it with like goop and stuff, and then just had it explode on the ground. Like really goofy, but fun. It's very fun.
Yeah, that's a fun backstory for that particular scene. I really enjoyed that.
Yeah, it's just because if it was today with CGI, it would have been a lot more of a spectacle. Um,
Hmm.
and in a very similar way to like in Back to the Future, when like the train goes off the bridge, like and it makes a big explosion, even though that was a miniature too, there'd be like seven different shots and like angles of the worm like just like falling and like exploding, and there'd be slow-mo and guts everywhere, and everybody would be covered in it, like it would be gratuitous, whereas this is just like it's dead. We did it. Like it's a bit
Yeah.
unceremonious, but it's a weird
Yeah.
worm. Um, so that's Tremors. It's weird.
But it's so kitsch and so fun and really enjoyable. And really, to me, this is the birth of the great Shai Hulud, who is but a large graboid.
Yeah, this is the little maker, the beginning of things.
Hmm.
Um, so we like to relate all these movies to Dune, and we've talked a lot about the worms and like the effects, and it's very similar to David Lynch's Dune in how much effort went into it, and in a way, I think these worms look a hell of a lot more phallic than David Lynch's. Um,
Yeah. Well,
yeah,
they're just way more interesting too. I as we discussed in David Lynch's Dune, the worms were the one thing that I could get behind in that whole movie.
yes,
And I really enjoyed them. And I do think that, there's clear connections here because you have a worm that responds to sound,
hmm
that's in a desert, that's, in Dune, the worms terrorizing people are not, a major plot point, but it's certainly a factor that, like you have to respect the worm in the desert, you have to be fearful of it, you have to understand how it works. And, they took that in Tremors and made the worm into a monster. And it's clear that these people have to figure out how to be Fremen and to survive these worms.
yeah, they have to come up with all of their own solutions to this problem. I feel like if they had thumpers, they would have used them. Uh,
Yeah, that is
and
absolutely true.
if they had the maker hooks, sure, they might be able to hitch a ride on one of them.
Yeah, yeah. All
Um,
things that might have happened in Tremors too.
oh damn! Now you see, I haven't seen all the other Tremors, but we're about to get into it. Um, in the show notes, I have uh, will the worms break through the shield wall with this scene as the worm has broken through the concrete ditch.
Yeah, yeah, they've gotten through the culvert and yeah.
Honestly, I don't get why the worm here died, whereas like in later scenes, the worms are like seen like uprooting houses and like smashing through other concrete walls. I guess that one
Well,
was cinder blocks, but was
yeah,
it just
so
the speed this one was going at, chasing the two guys?
so one thing that you have to learn about graboids, Garrett, is
Okay.
that graboids are always evolving.
Oh,
And they evolve very quickly to learn and complete their survival process. And that is why the Tremors franchise continues to produce more content.
explain the greater Tremors cinematic universe.
Yeah, so in general, the Tremors franchise follows a group or so of people who have to deal with continual tremor uprisings where they are often paid by the government or another organization to get rid of the tremors or the graboids. And the graboids evolve. You see that, so this is not like Jaws where you're just like dealing with a shark and then the son of the shark and the mom of the shark and like it's still just a shark that's
Right,
vaguely
right.
related to the other shark. Yeah, no, these monsters change. And they change pretty rapidly over the course of the different movies, and they have really interesting different, you know, things like the graboids, are blind, so they're affected by sound. Later on, there are other senses that the graboids use to get their people. And I did look it up. Tremors 4 is a Back to the Past version with cowboys. Uh,
Awesome.
yeah, yeah, who are dealing with the graboid situation. I don't think I've seen Tremors 5, but Tremors 6, they go to the Arctic and are dealing with the graboids in a cold weather situation.
Oh, okay.
And then I have not seen Tremors 6. So, and it should surprise you not at all that the main character for all of these movies going forward is our amazing Doomsday Prepper Brett.
That is something I saw in the like research was he's the only person that's been in all the Tremor movies, and he's like
Yeah.
he's like a secondary character in this. But like yeah, it makes sense he would be so like not necessarily traumatized, but now so paranoid about the Tremors and that he would get on and in with the government on destroying all of them.
Well, and it's not about his paranoia at all.
No,
It's very much
no.
about his expertise because
Oh,
he is a
okay.
true graboid expert and he is ready and he knows how to defeat these worms and he knows to expect the unexpected with their changing evolutions and all that. But the other thing I have to tell you, Garrett, is
This is
that
so
these
goofy.
movies so this movie might not have had a lot of sexism in it, and it might have, been, a fun little buddy comedy between them, but not like in a like super comedic way. The other ones really do take all of these tropes and, run with them because they know that it's a campy joke. And
Okay.
they definitely play it up in the next few movies. There's one scene in Tremors 2 that, like, when you were describing the lady getting her pants taken off, I was just like, oh, Tremors 2.
Oh, okay.
Because there's a scene where, you have hot scientist lady and you zoom in on her butt, but then it pans to you zooming in on one of the guys' butts too. Like, so
Oh,
like there's
okay.
a,
Okay.
like yes, there's sexism, but there's also like a play on, like on for both genders and there's elements of it's very very campy like it turns into a joke. And the other thing is that like I don't know if you've watched them, but I remember right when I was watching all the Tremors movies, I was also watching things like Sharknado.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so there's this whole genre of disaster camp movies that this comes into, and they all kind of have a lot of the same elements. They have ditzy blondes and they have scientist ladies and they have just like totally wacky like plot twists and like solutions and issues that just don't make sense at all, but they're fun and it's really enjoyable series. And they've also done like a TV series too that I've not seen and did not know about, but am excited to check out.
Yeah. I after finishing this, I was like, I want to see more Tremors because I want to like I don't know, get a little bit more of this world and like this like weird mythology. Like I don't know. I've always liked these sort of big series that focus on like one monster. Why I like horror movies because you get a bunch of different interpretations of like who is Freddy Krueger or like how do people go up against Jaws and like that sort of thing. And this series, I can see them having a lot of fun with this concept. That's why I thought it was so funny that there is the Cowboys one because that's exactly where my mind would go to because it's just fun. Um,
Yeah, well, and it's also like I really, really, really enjoy historical horror movies, and there have been a few really good ones in the past couple years. The Witch is one,
oh, I love The
and
Witch. I
The Witch is
love that
so
movie.
good. And then Prey,
Okay, yeah, yeah,
that's
yeah,
really good. So like I think that, because I think that one of the issues with horror movies that we have these days is that, we live in a world where there's always technology, there's always a cell phone, there's always a car, cars don't break down like they used to in the 60s and
right.
70s. Like you didn't have to go knock on some stranger's door, and you wouldn't now. You wouldn't.
Yeah, no, no, you'd get
Um,
shot.
Yeah, so you have to create plots where these kind of horror things could actually happen conceivably. And I think setting things in a, period setting of like the Wild West or colonial America or, Crimson Peak out in a
Yeah.
castle, that and because there's already a gothic horror element even in some of those stories that are like Wuthering Heights, those kinds of things. And I think that's just it's a great setting, and I would love to see more of it.
Yeah, it's creative, you know?
Hmm.
Yeah, because the only way you can really make the like horror movie now where like you don't just get the authorities involved and then like it's over is you set the protagonists to be children and nobody believes them, you know? Like that's
Yeah,
Stranger Things. That's it. That's all these things.
yeah.
And
Well,
I'm
and both movies that are set in the 80s.
yes, yes, that's very true.
Yeah. Yeah, and that's not really a fun plot to not to just rehash over and over either.
Yeah, that's very true. Um, I think that's it for Tremors.
Yeah.
Um, where do we rank this in our grand movie scale?
Yeah, it's hard because it's so fun, but it's not an S tier movie. It's not an A tier movie. Is it a B tier movie?
I think this has the same kind of like rewatch and appreciation I will get from The Fifth Element and Independence Day.
Okay.
Like it because both of those movies are campy and fun and a bit stupid and like uh just
But
like
I will say that it doesn't have the quotability,
right,
and I really don't think it has the watchability of either of those movies, but it does have the camp.
right.
I do think it's significantly better than The Thing though. So, you know,
Yeah, but Kate, if you had your way, the thing would be in D or F tier. I have brought the thing up. Uh
that's true. That is true.
like
So
like
how do you feel in relation to The Thing?
I mean, I like the thing more than Tremors,
Okay.
but
So yeah, I don't know. I
I
mean that C tier for me, I guess. I don't know. Like,
I'm content putting them on the same level because I think they have a lot of similarities between them in terms of like where they fit in the media landscape. Like like they're creative, the effects are interesting. It does nothing groundbreaking. It doesn't have that special sauce. It's silly. It's kind of exploitive, like
hmm.
um
Yeah, and I do think that the big difference between them is that The Thing was trying to be serious, and I don't think that Tremors was making any attempt at being serious.
so one of the things that I think broke Tremors a little bit, and we didn't talk about this. So if you want the last of the facts, here's some facts. It was originally going to be an R-rated film because they had a lot of swearing. They were
Oh.
calling these things motherfuckers all day long. Um,
Hmm.
and then they had to edit out a lot of that swearing and replace it with mother humper, which is weird. Um, like they call them that over the radio a few times. That there are a number of other things like that. Um, so I think in a way of like taking it out of being so like gritty, they definitely put it in that field of it's not as serious because if it was serious and I saw one of these things, I would be screaming fuck for hours. Like,
Yeah, I think that's fair. Yeah.
but
I still
I'm
don't think it takes itself too seriously in the
no,
right
no,
way.
it doesn't. Like fundamentally it doesn't, but that is just another one of the things that I think takes it out of that is they made it PG-13. You could
Mm.
play this movie straight. You could play the idea of Tremors straight and it would be bad.
Yeah, yeah. Oh, I agree.
It would be bad. Like
Hmm.
I don't think you can play such a goofy concept straight.
Yeah.
Uh,
Okay, so where's it going?
it's going C tier. Let's put it
C
in
tier
C
for
tier.
Tremors. Yeah.
C tier for Tremors. The legacy of the worm continues. Um, check the description to see what we're talking about next week. We appreciate you sticking with us for this one.
Yeah, yeah. Thanks for listening, and I hope you enjoy Tremors 1 through 6 or 7 or however many there are.
Get your Dune tickets, get the
Yeah.
popcorn bowl, get the Lego set, support it. You know,
Yeah, we need a God Emperor. Buy your tickets now. Buy tickets for your friends. Buy tickets for your cousins. Buy tickets for dead people. It's fine. There'll be more room in the theater.
buy tickets for your worms. Or
Yes.
okay,
Okie dokes. Good night, everyone.
thank you.